world leading time at 3:52 is a 1,500 meter time. And so that meant that instead of having the best in the world separated in different heats, Kip Kano and I were paired together in the first heat. And I did a little complaining because I said, that's just not the way it's supposed to be. And they said, yes, but we don't want to trouble the Germans. So just a little thing that happened. Now, having said that, if you remember 1972 a little bit, they had false starting times for the sprinters who didn't make it to the starting line. They had the same thing for us. But fortunately, because the sprinters had missed it, you know, we were in the 1,500 meters looking to make sure that we didn't miss anything. And just to give you a little bit of an idea of the significance of finals of the 1,500, ABC was telecasting everything time delayed, except for one event. That was the finals of the 1,500 meters. They were going to bring that back live. There was so much attention. And so there was all that pressure on me, and the excitement and anticipation was really amazing. In fact, it was so difficult in the Olympic Village just existing, kind of the paparazzi thing. They would be bugging you in your bedroom. They could get in your room, wherever you were. I finally left the village and went down about an hour south of the city in a little town called Garmisch. And that's where that night, as I was having dinner with my family, that I first learned about the Munich massacre. I got a call, I mean, one of the waiters said, you know, there's been a shooting in the village. So I called one of my roommates. How I got through to this day, I still don't know. And he said, don't come back. It's extremely tense. And so I stayed out another day. And then they had the ceremony for those that had been killed. As you may recall, you had a group called the Black Septemberists, went in dressed in sweatsuits, and as a result of their going in, they jumped into the Israeli delegation, shot a lot of them. Then there was this opportunity, I should say, to move the terrorists from the Olympic Village out to the airport, and in the process of transfer, somebody blew up a grenade, and blew up the whole, everybody was there, everyone was killed that was involved in it. In fact, I'll just push ahead one more moment. 2011, when we had the 9/11, put it that way, after Munich and 9/11 in our country, I wanted to reflect on what took place in Munich. So as a congressman, I got into the Library of Congress, and if you can find it, it's actually a great reflection on how the nation of Israel responded. It's called the Sword of Gideon. And I had my staff look at it, and they went at it in a very hard fashion, going after all the terrorists. It took them years to find them. That Golda Meir was the prime minister, and she put together a special team made up of, one was an explosive expert, another one was, the last one was about 9 of them, was a person that would sweep through the room, make sure everything was clean. But it took them about 4 years to track down everyone. But I felt that that was what we needed to do in our country when I was serving as a congressman. We needed to have a strong response because terrorists don't always stop extreme. So that's a little bit of leading up to what was going on. Now, so we're in the first, okay, so we have the ceremony in the Olympic Village, a day off, and then back into my first round of competition. Now, there are 3 rounds to qualify, 2 semi-preliminary and final. In the opening round of competition, with 500 meters to go, in this particular area, I was fouled by another runner. Now, let me explain how it happened. My fault, much as anything. I'm an experienced runner. I've run internationally before. I'm in the pack. 4 qualify for the next round of competition. I got into a group of other runners, and I had to make a decision. Either I put the brakes on so that everybody goes by, and then you swing around behind and move up to the front, get ready for the last straightaway. Or, as happened for me, on the right-hand side, a spot opened up. And so I started to move through that spot. Well, it started to close, so I slowed down, but the guy behind me didn't. And so there were 3 of us that fell. I hit my head on the railing, was temporarily unconscious, got back up, finished the race, but didn't qualify for the next round of competition. Now, having said that, one of the miracles about all of this is my wife, Ann, was seated right about up in this area, and somehow she was able to get out of the stands. This is my wife, Ann, right here. She was able to get out of the stands. You know, of all the security that was there, you had military, all the accents, finger on the trigger. They weren't sure whether you were a good or bad guy. It was extremely tense. Somehow, she got out, and as I finished my last lap on the quarter, she met me right here in the tunnel. To this day, we still don't know how that happened. Because somehow she got through the crowds, got down there. First thing we did, we just become Christians. We prayed, we said, dear God, this isn't what we expected. Now let me put it back in your experience. What is something that you have had in your life that you anticipated was going to be great, or you put a lot of effort into it, and then all of a sudden, in a split second, it was gone? And that's what it was for me. It was like, boom, wow, I hadn't planned on this. And so fortunately, we become Christians in that year of May 18th, 1972. And I know, even though that I didn't get reinstated, that God helped me through that because of the things I'm going to explain as we go along. So we said a simple prayer. We held each other and embraced each other, and all of a sudden the media and the coaches were upon us, and they said, you know, you were fouled, you'll be reinstated, and boom, they all disappeared. Nobody was there to help. So we left the track, both of us, and we walked under that tunnel back over towards where I showed the warm-up track where I was standing with our daughter. And I kept thinking, there's got to be something we can do, you know. So I remembered an acquaintance that I had made. The guy, some of you who are of my generation will remember, a guy named Howard Cosell. Howard is a very fine attorney. And so we walked into that building where the track was a moment ago. That was where ABC's booths were. I said, Howard, I need some help. And he said, Jimmy, I said, sit down. We're going to write a petition and you'll be reinstated. And I wish I'd kept that because actually we gave it to the International Olympic Committee. But we sat down and he had me write out a petition for why I should be reinstated. It was a pencil and a piece of regular paper. We submitted that. Actually, that night, German television had another angle showing that I was hit from behind and fell. And so that particular film, plus my petition, my coach went all night long getting together the International Olympic Committee to have a meeting the next morning about whether I'd be reinstated. Now, let me say this. For the most part, if it's happened in modern history since 1972, if it's the first round, generally they reinstate you. With this, it had never been done before. So I met with the international officials the next morning, and I remember the guy's face. He had a nice tie on, all proper. He said, you know, Jim, we've never reinstated anyone before. Why don't you come back in 4 years and try again? That was my response, too. I wanted to reach out, grab him by the tie, pound on him a little bit, and let him feel what I was feeling at that point. It was extremely frustrating. And so that's where, as I left the track, I walked back over to the warm-up track. As we were meeting just where I could have a warm-up and get ready for the races, I left the track. One of the hardest interviews I've ever done followed that. It was Jim McKay, ABC Wide World Sports. And he asked me what I was going to do from that point on, because really my career was over as an amateur for this reason. Because I'd become a Christian, I couldn't justify getting paid under the table and saying that I was a Christian and cheating. So I told him, I said, my career's over. I've got a family to raise, I have children, I've got another life to go to. It was a really hard interview because my life was what it was, and I loved running, still do. But it had all of a sudden been taken away. So that's what leads me up to what I want to share with you now. Some of the lessons that I learned from Munich, and I think they're applicable to everything you do now. First one, never stop dreaming. Never stop dreaming. Everyone is going to have a Munich in their life. You're not going to escape that. On the other hand, you don't know what you can do until you dream big. And dreaming big is a big factor in all of this. Before I started running in high school, and I'll explain more of that a little later, my sole experience in terms of seeing any part of the world, I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, and Nikki knows where that is. Not much there, a lot of, in the winter when the wind blows out of the north, it's extremely cold. In the summer when the humidity and heat come out of the south, it's extremely hot. So if you ever go there, go in the spring or the fall. But I've never traveled anyplace else besides Wichita and Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs because that's where both sets of my grandparents lived. And I wasn't disappointed with my life, don't get me wrong there. But I'm saying because I had a man named Coach Timmons who helped me dream big, and I'll touch more on that later, I began seeing things I'd never seen before. I started traveling all the United States. In fact, by the time I was finished, I'd been to Tokyo, to Moscow, to East Germany, to West Germany, to Warsaw, Poland, lots of different places. And I would say that for your athletes, they may not go to the Olympics, but if they don't dream big, they're never going to know what they could possibly accomplish. And don't get caught up in the destination. The destination may be a time, an Olympic gold medal, but it's the journey along the way. I'll give you a couple of examples there too. One of the people along the way that made a very big impression on my life is a guy named Jim Grella. Now, a lot of you wouldn't know who he is, but in 1964, here at the LA Coliseum, I leaned at the finish line as a junior in high school. I went to the Tokyo Olympics and he didn't go. He was the experienced runner. In fact, he'd already purchased his wife's ticket to go to the Olympic Games. He taught me what sportsmanship was all about. It's winning and losing, but outside of that, it's also having friendships. We're the best of friends to this day. He and Jean and my wife and I would get together on many occasions, but he taught me about sportsmanship. Another one of those instances when I was competing in West Germany, it was West Germany then, now of course it's Germany. I was in the hotel room and I had a knock at the door. I had this guy walk in and I recognized his face right away. A guy named Jürgen Mai, a name you wouldn't know, but in 1967 he was a 335, 1500 meter runner from East Germany. Very, very fine runner. He had just escaped from East Germany. Sometimes we forget about the history there. He'd escaped in the wheel well of a truck. He knew we were competing, he knew where I was, he wanted to just come and say hi, and then he disappeared. Because he knew the East Germans would come after him. He's a really fine athlete. But again, it's the journey along the way. The destinations are exciting. In fact, I was sharing with someone earlier, we're going to talk about goals a little later. Coach Timmons taught me a lot about goals. Some of them are very simple. My first goal in high school, because I was cut from every team I was on, was to make a team. And once I made the team, I wanted to get a letter jacket, because I knew behind the letter jacket there was a girlfriend. So, you know, those dreams and those goals can be really simple. But again, going back to the whole concept of don't stop dreaming. One of the other lessons is the value of hard work. I mean, a lot of times when I share in camp, or as I will hear, you'll see these wonderful accomplishments. God gave me some great talent, but he gave me these wonderful people along the way to help. And they taught me the value of hard work. It's real simple. What you put in, you get out. And I know that that's one of those lessons that lasts for a lifetime, and it serves me well in politics, it serves my family well. You know, there are no shortcuts. It takes a lot of work. In fact, now and then when I share with some high schoolers, and again, you all of some of my generation can appreciate some of the times and the wonderful things. I mean, in 2000, I was named High School Athlete of the Century. Wow! In front of Tiger Woods and LeBron James. And I'm going, how could that possibly happen? Now, when I share that with some high schoolers, a lot of times they don't have the history. And so my wife will say, you need to tell them the work that you used to do, because you see, again, going back to that principle, hard work brings dividends. So don't be afraid of the work along the way. Set goals. Don't be afraid to sacrifice. I remember when I get up in the morning when I was first running in high school, I was churched at this point, and in those days, I'm dating myself, they actually put glass milk bottles on the porch. Anybody remember that a little bit? Very few. Okay, so a milkman was at our church. He knew I was running in the morning. And I don't think he meant this as a negative. He said, you know, running in that cold weather protects your lungs. I thought, well, I want you to have them yet, so I'm going to keep going. But I'm just saying, there's these little things along the way, depending on how you want to handle them. Another one, a little lesson we learn out of this is be quick to forgive. You're going to have something in your life personally or in your athlete's life personally that's not going to go their way. How are they going to handle it? Going back to Munich, for example. That was like getting a punch in the gut. In fact, I remember coming back to this country, and I had a couple of sports writers who wrote headlines, Ryun doesn't know how to win. And you know, you sort of live with that. That's part of life. But I'd rather have lived the adventure than never have tried. In fact, in 1908 was the last American to win the 1500 meters gold medal. We still don't have one. So it's an event that just hasn't gone well for us. But so being quick to forgive. Now I have to admit that day, even though I was a Christian, when that guy said come back in 4 years, I wasn't willing to forgive him at that point. But I remember over a period of time realizing that I wasn't as excited about life. Slowly I realized what I had to do was forgive that man, forget the circumstances. And I went through this whole process. Forgiving myself, forgiving the IOC, forgiving the USOC, forgiving that man. And it took days, months, and years. Finally, I mean, it got so bad at one point I couldn't watch the Olympic Games. I thought, these guys are bums. But that's what will happen if you don't turn that anger and bitterness in the right direction. So be willing to do it quickly. Make sure that you make work. Let me finish that forgiveness part up quickly. 1984, now we're fast forward 12 years. Los Angeles Olympics. I'm in the Olympic Stadium with my family watching. We're up in the best seats of the house, in the real cheap seats. They're so far away you can't see anybody. But we were there. We were thrilled to be there. And it was in the early days. Again, if you can remember, they just had started Jumbotron screens. I mean, now we expect it in every stadium. there was the Jumbotron screen, and when you're up as high as we were, you appreciate it. Everybody looked like a little ant down on the track or whatever. And at that point, the high jump was on. And I remember watching the screen, and the high jumper, of course, on that big screen was about 20 feet tall. On the screen, in reality, he was only 6 feet tall. And I like to think of this as God's sense of humor. The camera swung around to, yes, that man who could have reinstated me in 1972. He was standing by the high jump there. And I thought to myself, I know what I wanted to do in 1972, but I no longer felt that. That's God's grace. And I say that to each one of you, be quick to forgive. It takes time, but God's going to help you through it if you want to. One more thing, keep a right perspective. I want you to tell your athletes that keep a right perspective. You love to win. Who doesn't? That's why we train hard. We go out and sweat in the hot weather and cold weather, and we hurt and we ache and all that sort of stuff because we like to win. But you know what? It's like I look back at Munich. While that was a difficult situation, no one died in that race. My life didn't end there. In fact, I didn't want it to end there. I wanted to keep that perspective that it's a race. It's not the end of the world. And so I would ask you to say that to your athletes.